As children, everyone dreams of a fairy tale wedding where a prince and princess share a happy kiss. Beneath the beautiful veil, the bride's eyes reflect a sorrowful reality rather than a joyful dream. Whispers erupt among the guests as they wonder where the foolish prince has disappeared to. The devastating truth hangs heavy in the air, revealing that the groom didn't even appear at his own wedding. Memories of her new family contrast sharply with the reality of her absent husband. She clutches a delicate floral embroidery hoop, her wide eyes reflecting sudden surprise. Startled by her name, Rebecca turns to see her frantic father-in-law and mother-in-law approaching. Her father-in-law grits his teeth in frustration, announcing that their worthless son Alec has finally been found. The humiliating reality strikes as she learns he skipped the ceremony entirely to be with another woman. Utterly stunned by the betrayal, Rebecca stammers in disbelief at the cruel news. The bitter truth emerges that Alec has always harbored an excessive fondness for other women. His parents explain that his womanizing caused countless failed engagements, hoping a wonderful lady like her might finally cure him. Bowing deeply in shame, her new father-in-law offers a sincere apology for deceiving her so completely. Rebecca grounds herself by recalling her humble roots as the daughter of a simple baronial family. She always knew a proposal from a duke's son she had never met meant this was no ordinary marriage. Setting her jaw with newfound resolve, Rebecca refuses to let despair consume her. Gathering her strength, she firmly reminds herself that she is already Alec's wedded wife. Despite lacking his acknowledgement, she resolves to take her time to deepen their bond as a married couple. She rationally accepts that a husband with terrible womanizing habits is an unfortunately common, albeit sad, reality. Closing her eyes in quiet determination, she decides it is far too early to surrender her marriage. Bowing respectfully, Rebecca promises her touched in-laws that she will strive to become a wife worthy of Alec. Her relieved in-laws vow to do everything they can to help while pleading with her to take care of their wayward son. Rebecca walks solemnly through the grand, lonely halls of the ducal estate. Standing alone in her room, she sighs at the realization that her husband hasn't returned to their marital bedroom on their wedding night. The painful thought echoes in her mind, confirming he truly is out with another woman. Settling at her desk, she clings to the hope that communicating and getting to know each other will foster mutual understanding. A bright idea strikes her as she wonders if crafting a thoughtful gift might create the perfect chance to talk. Reflecting on her roots in the Iris household, she remembers how many people deeply appreciate handmade crafts. Having learned to sew from a young age, she developed a profound and special love for the art of embroidery. A gentle smile graces her face as she prepares her embroidery hoop with renewed purpose. She decides to stitch a myriad of vibrant blue flowers, inspired by the striking color of Alec's beautiful eyes. Diligently working her needle, she softly wonders when her absent husband will finally return home. Exhaustion overtakes her as she slumps over her desk, only to be jolted awake by a sudden, jarring noise. A sharp, cold voice cuts through the silence, demanding to know what she is doing. Startled wide awake, Rebecca gasps as she finally lays eyes on Alec. Flustered and hastily composing herself, she welcomes him home while apologizing for her embarrassing state. Her relief quickly morphs into shock as she takes a closer look at his appearance. Standing before her is her husband, sporting wildly disheveled hair and clothes thrown into complete disarray. Her heart sinks as she spots the undeniable, damning traces of red lipstick smeared across his skin. Ignoring her greeting, Alec coldly glares down at her and questions her presence in the room. Crossing his arms defensively, he sharply reminds her that he had explicitly assigned her to a separate, private room. Clutching her hands nervously, Rebecca stammers that she stayed up simply to wait for his return. She softly admits her desire to converse, but Alec merely scowls in annoyed silence. A tense, heavy silence fills the opulent bedroom as the newlywed couple faces off in the dim candlelight. Remembering her hard work, Rebecca suddenly perks up and reaches for the handmade gift she prepared. Holding out the delicate item, she timidly explains that she sewed the sachet specifically with him in mind. His icy command strikes her like a physical blow, instantly shattering the fragile moment of hope. Rebecca freezes mid-motion, letting out a small gasp of utter bewilderment. Alec pinches the bridge of his nose, his face contorting into an expression of profound irritation. Fixing her with a ruthless glare, he orders her to listen carefully, declaring that he never considered marriage and already has many charming lovers. Delivering the final, crushing blow, he coldly informs his new bride that she is nothing but a nuisance. Glaring with sheer contempt, Alec coldly commands his new bride to disappear from his sight. Pointing a harsh finger at her, he brutally declares that he has zero intention of ever becoming her husband. He ruthlessly reminds the terrified Rebecca that this marriage was decided by his parents entirely without his consent. Looming over her trembling form, Alec cruelly dismisses her as a mere baron's daughter entirely devoid of any charm. Cast out and utterly rejected, Rebecca stands alone before the heavy wooden doors of her husband's private chambers. Refusing to surrender to despair over the failed encounter, she fiercely vows to become a refined lady truly worthy of Alec. Gripping her chest to calm her racing heart, Rebecca repeatedly whispers quiet reassurances to steady her fragile nerves. Diving into rigorous etiquette training, Rebecca attentively listens as an instructor corrects the precise angle of her dining knife. Watching from the doorway, her worried in-laws carefully observe the young bride's grueling dedication. Her concerned father-in-law softly suggests that hiring a tutor is a good idea, but pushing herself so late into the night is entirely unnecessary. Her mother-in-law gently counters that this relentless study is exactly what Rebecca wished for to relearn the proper manners of a duchess. Desperate to close the silent chasm between her and Alec, she begs the instructor to rigorously check her form once more. Suddenly losing her grip from sheer exhaustion, Rebecca lets out a sharp gasp as her silver knife unexpectedly slips. The heavy blade clatters loudly against the polished floor, shattering the quiet focus of the intense dining lesson. Though she desperately begs for another attempt, her instructor firmly halts the lesson and demands she take a short break from her non-stop morning studies. A sudden, familiar voice calls her name, instantly slicing through the heavy atmosphere of the dining room. Tears of pure determination prick her eyes as she silently reaffirms her burning desire to become a woman truly worthy of Alec. Startled by the sudden intrusion, Rebecca flinches and swiftly spins around in her wooden dining chair. Standing framed in the doorway with an unreadable expression, Alec abruptly addresses his startled wife. Her eyes widening in complete shock, Rebecca stammers his name as she leaps up from the table in a total panic. Flustered and eager to please, she frantically offers to prepare tea, only for Alec to immediately shoot down the gesture. Sighing in clear exasperation, Alec bluntly informs her that they have both been invited to attend a formal tea party. He bitterly complains that his parents are being noisy about the gathering at the Embroidery market, which is scheduled for 10 days from now. Delivering a final sting of rejection, Alec coldly declares that he will not help her with any of the event preparations. Despite his icy demeanor, Rebecca steps forward with shining eyes and eagerly volunteers to accompany him. Her heart swelling with a desperate burst of hope, she proudly declares her readiness to stand by his side as his true wife. Once again left alone in the sweeping silence of the estate, Rebecca stares at the grand double doors he just exited. Clasping her hands in overwhelming joy, she celebrates the miraculous chance to finally debut at a tea party alongside Alec. A bright, radiant smile breaks across her face as a renewed wave of vibrant energy washes away her previous exhaustion. Her thoughts instantly race toward her wardrobe, desperate to find a breathtaking dress that might finally make him like her. Throwing open the doors of her massive armoire, she stares intensely at the sprawling array of luxurious garments. She anxiously realizes that her family's modest, conservative gowns will completely fail to match Alec's notoriously flashy tastes. Tossing aside gown after gown in frantic frustration, she swiftly rejects every single piece as utterly inadequate. Pausing to inspect a specific piece, she marvels at the exquisite quality and stunningly beautiful color of the fabric. Gripping the elegant material with a surge of fierce determination, she officially selects her base canvas for the grand event. A confident smile graces her delicate features as she firmly visualizes exactly how to make the simple gown work out perfectly. Dashing across the luxurious room in a flurry of motion, she eagerly reaches for her trusty sewing supplies. She aggressively flips open her ornate wooden sewing box, revealing rows of colorful threads and gleaming silver tools. Taking a deep breath to steady her trembling hands, she prepares to permanently plunge her needle into the incredibly fine dress. Channeling her deep love for embroidery, she meticulously sketches out a brilliant floral pattern across the pristine fabric. Holding the heavily modified dress up to the light, she critically inspects her own breathtaking handiwork. Stepping back with a triumphant gleam in her eyes, she proudly declares that her glorious, customized gown is finally finished. The highly anticipated day finally arrives, dawning brightly over the magnificent, sprawling estate of the Embroidery market. Standing shoulder to shoulder with her husband, Rebecca politely bows and graciously thanks Mark Elberk for the generous invitation. Introducing herself with a flawless curtsy, she warmly greets the aristocratic hosts who immediately take notice of her stunning presence. The seasoned noble gasps in genuine admiration, loudly praising the utterly splendid and unique dress she wears. Blushing softly under the glowing attention, Rebecca politely accepts the high praise with the perfect grace of a true lady. The gathering crowd quickly murmurs their approval, deeply captivated by the breathtakingly lovely embroidery adorning her gown. Despite her sparkling social triumph, Alec stands completely silent with his arms firmly crossed, deliberately looking away. A cold pang of sorrow strikes Rebecca's heart as she realizes her own husband refuses to cast even a single glance in her direction. Panic rapidly bubbles up within her chest as she frantically wonders what horrible mistake she could have possibly made to displease him so intensely. To her absolute horror, a chorus of sweet female voices suddenly rings out through the party, eagerly calling her husband's name. Greeting a beautiful woman named Irene, Alec warmly remarks that he has been waiting for her forever. Noticing the stunned newcomer, Irene tilts her head and softly asks who this girl might be. Wrapping an arm around his companion, Alec boldly introduces Irene as one of his many lovers. Trembling in disbelief, Rebecca stammers that they were supposed to attend as husband and wife, but Alec coldly denies ever agreeing to that. Leaning in with a condescending smile, Irene sharply warns the young bride not to act so high and mighty just because they are married on paper. Playing the role of an understanding companion, Irene smugly declares that she doesn't mind if Alec fools around as long as he remains true to himself. Deeply pleased by her submissive words, Alec smiles and praises Irene for being such a wonderfully great woman. The surrounding nobles gasp in thinly veiled disgust, loudly whispering about Alec brazenly flaunting his mistress right in front of his new wife. Glancing back with complete apathy, Alec totally dismisses the brewing scandal and focuses solely on Irene. Offering his arm to his mistress, Alec completely abandons his bride and officially escorts Irene into the grand venue. Left entirely alone, Rebecca stands frozen as she watches her husband walk away with another woman. Cruel murmurs echo through the hall as judgmental guests stare at the abandoned bride, mockingly wondering what could possibly be wrong with Lady Hollow. Unable to bear the piercing stares of the aristocratic crowd, the rejected bride slowly turns and walks away in utter silence. Retreating to an empty stone balcony to hide her burning shame, Rebecca quietly lowers her head in total defeat. Sitting in isolation, she silently scolds herself for foolishly getting ahead of herself. A wave of profound regret washes over her as she realizes her desperate attempt to catch his attention with a dress was completely futile. She clutches her chest, completely overwhelmed by how embarrassing her pathetic hopes turned out to be. Suddenly, a bright-eyed blonde girl peeks around the corner, curiously observing the sorrowful bride. Gazing at the lonely noblewoman, the hidden observer quietly marvels at finding such a breathtakingly beautiful girl. Tripping slightly as she reveals herself, the mysterious girl gasps in surprise and apologizes for interrupting the private moment. Her eyes sparkling with genuine awe, the cheerful newcomer instantly fawns over the vibrant, colorful floral embroidery adorning Rebecca's gown. Clasping her hands in sheer delight, the girl excitedly declares that she has always deeply admired such gorgeous patterns. Smiling shyly at the unexpected praise, Rebecca softly explains that she chose a bright design specifically for the spring tea party. A frantic male voice suddenly rings out, desperately calling the name Rosie across the terrace. A handsome young man rushes to the scene, quickly bowing to apologize for any trouble his energetic sister might have caused. The cheerful siblings properly introduce themselves as Rosie and Corny, members of the esteemed Amber Count family. Gathering her aristocratic grace, the young bride curtsies and formally introduces herself as Rebecca Hollow. Startled by her identity, Corny pauses and stares intently at her exquisite gown in total silence. Continuing to stare intensely, the young man steps closer to the bewildered bride, examining the fabric with absolute focus. Leaning in remarkably close to inspect the fabric, Corny suddenly snaps out of his trance and frantically apologizes for his incredible rudeness. Unable to contain his awe, he passionately praises the delicate color gradient and the absolutely flawless, complex stitching. Rosie gently chides her brother for making things awkward, but Corny continues to rave about the dress's restrained, luxurious elegance. Bowing deeply in embarrassment, Corny explains that he was simply captivated because the gown is far too beautiful. Chuckling at his intense reaction, Rosie cheerfully informs Rebecca that her brother is an absolute, complete fashion enthusiast. His eyes shining with professional curiosity, Corny eagerly asks to know the name of the master artisan who created such a masterpiece. Blushing furiously, Rebecca nervously confesses that she actually stitched the elaborate embroidery all by herself. Utterly stunned by the revelation, the siblings gasp in pure shock, completely unable to believe she isn't a professional seamstress. Misinterpreting their stunned silence, Rebecca panics and anxiously wonders if it is highly shameful for a duke's wife to perform her own needlework. Shattering her fears with a bright, genuine smile, Corny loudly declares that her skill is an absolutely wonderful talent. Overwhelmed by the sincere validation, Rebecca stares up at him with wide, teary eyes. Taking a bold step forward, Corny earnestly calls her name with a sudden spark of intense inspiration. Holding out his hand, he enthusiastically asks if she would ever consider making a custom dress together with him. Completely blindsided by the monumental offer, Rebecca blinks in utter confusion. Letting out a soft gasp of disbelief, she stammers in total bewilderment at the sudden proposal. Her mind races to process the shocking idea of designing a high-class dress alongside Lord Corny. Sighing at her brother's terrible communication skills, Rosie bluntly scolds him for being far too vague. Apologizing for his lack of clarity, Corny explains that he designs clothes as a hobby, but his latest dress requires incredibly complex embroidery. He admits with frustration that even the most skilled professional seamstresses he knows are far too hesitant to attempt the intricate pattern. Clasping his hands in desperate pleading, Corny fervently begs for her exceptional help to complete his grand vision. Though deeply flattered by the incredible request, Rebecca hesitates and cautiously states that she must first confirm such a massive commitment with her husband. Smiling warmly with complete understanding, Corny happily agrees and promises that they will be eagerly waiting for her final answer. The grand, imposing exterior of a meticulously designed mansion stands prominently, showcasing classical columns and large double doors that hint at the wealth within. Two maids whisper nervously near the sprawling staircase, anxiously noting that it is almost time for Lord Corny's carriage to arrive. A contemplative young woman softly recalls a painful memory, noting that she tried asking Lord Alec about the situation afterward. She heartbreakingly remembers how the aloof Lord Alec simply brushed her off, coldly telling her to do whatever she wanted without a shred of empathy. Another memory surfaces of someone sympathetically advising her to take a break since she is always working so hard, prompting her to consider focusing on her lessons instead, just before a maid formally announces the arrival of the Amber family. Lord Corny Amber warmly greets the young lady alongside Rosie, brightly announcing that they have arrived to pick her up. The cheerful sister, Rosie Amber, urges Rebecca to hurry along with a bright smile, playfully warning her that their brother is getting tired of waiting. Rebecca formally addresses her elegantly dressed father-in-law and mother-in-law, respectfully announcing her immediate departure. The older couple watches with gentle, knowing expressions as the young lady gracefully takes her leave from the grand estate. The ornate carriage approaches the sprawling, breathtakingly massive architecture of the Amber family's magnificent residence. Corny enthusiastically welcomes his guest, warmly thanking Lady Rebecca for making the long journey to visit their home. Rebecca stands completely mesmerized, her eyes wide with shock as she takes in the spectacular sight of Lord Corny's beautifully organized personal atelier. Rosie happily explains that this dazzling room contains only a small portion of her brother's personal belongings, noting that the main residence holds several rooms dedicated exclusively to fabrics and lace. Corny dramatically gasps with passionate agreement, passionately declaring that he completely understands her profound awe. He intensely explains the irresistible, almost dangerous urge to buy beautiful fabric without thinking about the financial or spatial consequences. Rebecca enthusiastically shares her recent obsession with collecting Lorient region lacework because it shows the individuality of its makers, while Corny zealously validates the terrifying thought of missing out on a rare piece forever. Rosie watches the two fabric enthusiasts bond fiercely over their shared obsession, affectionately labeling them as nerds with a fond, wry smile. Shifting the energetic conversation, Rebecca leans in closely and eagerly asks what kind of dress Lord Corny wants to create. A beautifully detailed, intricate design sketch of a magnificent gown is gently presented for everyone to see. Rosie reveals that her surprisingly shy brother has fiercely guarded his art, making Rebecca only the second person outside their family to ever see this sketch. Rebecca gazes downward at the elegant sketch, her sparkling eyes reflecting a mixture of profound awe and creative inspiration. Stunned by its breathtaking beauty, Rebecca describes the design as amazing, poetically comparing its floral-patterned hem to a lush meadow on a bright sunny day. She continues praising the light-hearted aesthetic, vividly describing a playful design that evokes the cheerful feeling of birds chirping. Rebecca beautifully visualizes the movement of the garment, imagining a skirt that flows as gracefully and effortlessly as a gentle breeze. Holding an imaginary blossom, she envisions the design as a colorful field of flowers featuring a single violet quietly blooming. Corny solemnly notes the rigid stylistic trends of the dresses that are currently in fashion right now within high society. He thoughtfully explains that those luxurious, rose-blossom dresses only truly look their best when illuminated under the glaring light of grand chandeliers. With a soft but fiercely determined expression, Corny declares his ambitious desire to break away from tradition and create a completely new kind of dress. Deeply inspired by his vision, Rebecca leans forward with bright, enthusiastic eyes and eagerly volunteers to help make the dress. Corny looks deeply moved by her passionate support, softly affirming their exciting new project for this remarkable dress. He offers her a gentle, warmly appreciative smile that speaks volumes of his gratitude and newfound creative kinship. Bowing his head slightly in respectful excitement, he sincerely expresses his eager anticipation to work alongside her. Rosie proudly gestures toward a beautifully crafted, highly detailed garment, revealing that the dress from the other day was made entirely by her brother. Rebecca recoils in sheer, unadulterated shock, marveling at the unbelievably neat stitching on the magnificent piece presented before her. As Corny blushes modestly from the intense praise, Rebecca earnestly declares that he is truly skilled at sewing. Suddenly struck by an exciting thought, Corny enthusiastically exclaims, "Oh, right," while Lady Rosie watches the sudden shift in energy. He bashfully explains that her previous compliments gave him a little idea, prompting him to try sewing a special gift just for her. The image reveals an incredibly adorable, meticulously crafted stuffed bird toy resting gracefully on a soft, ribbon-adorned cloth. Corny nervously asks for her opinion, timidly offering the handmade creation as a heartfelt token of their deepening friendship. Watching Rebecca's prolonged, stunned silence, Corny anxiously second-guesses himself, wondering if his earnest gesture was too forward. Rosie leans in with wide, sparkling eyes, completely mesmerized by the delicate beauty of the unexpected, deeply personal gift. Rebecca finally erupts with overwhelming emotional joy, declaring the gift amazing and stating she has never seen such a beautiful stuffed toy before. Clutching the precious, handmade item, she tearfully looks up and asks if it is really okay for her to accept something so wonderful. Rebecca stares blankly for a fraction of a second, utterly overcome by a sudden, intense tidal wave of conflicting, sorrowful emotions. Shocked by her sudden, silent tears, both Corny and Rosie panic slightly, frantically calling out Rebecca's name in deep, genuine concern. Wiping her streaming tears, Rebecca softly apologizes, admitting with a fragile smile that she never expected to feel this happy. Corny and Rosie watch her with profound, silent empathy as Corny softly acknowledges her heartfelt, vulnerable admission. Rebecca heartbreakingly confesses how deeply sad she felt back then when Lord Alec coldly trampled all over her fragile feelings. Deeply ashamed of her emotional outburst, she tearfully begs for forgiveness for showing them such an unsightly, broken side of herself. Rosie's expression hardens into a fiercely protective and profoundly empathetic look of silent, unwavering emotional resolve. Rosie firmly declares that they are friends now, passionately urging the tearful Rebecca to never hold back her true feelings again. Tearfully embracing her new companions, Rebecca smiles warmly as an overwhelming sense of belonging washes over her. Placing a hand over his heart, Lord Corny formally asks if he can be counted as one of Lady Rebecca's friends. Rebecca enthusiastically agrees, while Corny happily declares that they will make the best dress together. As the evening sets in and Rebecca boards her carriage, Corny warmly invites her to return anytime to try out the new dress prototype. Expressing her deep gratitude, Rebecca softly admits that she hasn't laughed this much in a long time. Lord Corny and Rosie wave affectionately from the manor steps as the grand carriage slowly pulls away into the dusk. Watching the carriage disappear into the distance, a shadow of serious concern crosses both of their faces. Rosie anxiously wonders aloud if things are going poorly at Rebecca's home, prompting Corny to gently remind her that prying is unbecoming. Refusing to drop the subject, Rosie pointedly notes that Alec attended the Hollow family's wedding in place of the groom. With a sharp, decisive snap of his fingers, Corny signals his loyal subordinate to step out of the shadows. Turning his attention to the doorway, Corny orders Randy to subtly look into the troubling situation surrounding Alec. Appearing instantly, Randy calmly accepts the secretive directive without a moment of hesitation. Meanwhile, the ornate carriage arrives back at the sprawling estate where Rebecca currently resides. Upon entering the foyer, Rebecca asks about Lord Alec's whereabouts, just as he suddenly announces his own arrival. Surprised by his sudden appearance, Rebecca turns her head sharply toward the entryway. She watches nervously as a tall, imposing figure steps into the grand hall. Lord Alec stands before her, radiating an intense aura of irritation as he crosses his arms. Rebecca greets him respectfully, silently wondering if he returned in such a foul mood because another woman rejected him. When she timidly tries to speak to him, Alec immediately turns his back and coldly announces he is going to sleep. Aggressively ripping off his cravat, he practically storms down the hallway with simmering rage. Shooting a vicious glare over his shoulder, he snaps that she is annoying and demands she stop talking to him. His sharp eyes suddenly dart to the side, noticing her outdoor hat resting on the stand. Mockingly noting that she went out as well, Alec cruelly orders her to leave him alone. He dismissively waves his hand, telling her to go find other men or do whatever she wants. Flustered and defensive, Rebecca tries to explain that she was only at the Amber residence talking about sewing. Without pausing to listen, Alec continues his imposing stride down the lavish hallway, completely ignoring her desperate explanation. He lets out a harsh, exhausted breath, absolutely drained by her mere presence. Standing frozen in the hall, Rebecca bears the brunt of his silent judgment as he internally labels her an annoying woman. Collapsing onto an opulent sofa, Alec spitefully curses her plain looks, poor style, and prudish nature. Leaning his head back in sheer frustration, he coldly concludes that she is utterly useless even as a tool for political advancement. He bitterly resents his parents for forcing such a pathetic nuisance onto him. Staring blankly up at the ceiling, Alec releases a heavy sigh of pure exasperation. He coldly reflects that a woman like her will only ever be burdensome shackles holding him back. Rubbing his temple in annoyance, he begins plotting a convenient excuse to permanently drive her out of his life. Later that evening, Rebecca sits quietly at her vanity, diligently working on her delicate embroidery. Pulling a needle through the tight hoop, she silently admires how the rich fabric perfectly highlights the intricate beads. A sudden spark of realization hits her as she thoughtfully stares down at her meticulous handiwork. Reflecting on her joyful afternoon, she wonders if Lord Alec might actually open up to her if they talked about something he genuinely likes. Gazing at her colorful threads, Rebecca innocently ponders what kind of interests her distant husband might secretly have. The next morning at the Amber estate, a sleek dress form stands ready for a new creation in the sunlit atelier. Humming a cheerful tune, Lord Corny happily drapes and pins a large swath of pale fabric around the mannequin. A sudden voice calls out to him, startling him out of his blissful creative zone. Turning around to find his sister, Corny softly notes that Rosie seems unusually restless today. He eagerly explains that he is using temporary fabric to prepare a special fitting before Rebecca arrives tomorrow. A sharp knock at the door quickly draws his attention away from the unfinished garment. Randy steps into the room with a somber expression, ready to deliver a crucial report to Lord Cornelius. Noticing Rosie hovering anxiously nearby, Randy gently suggests she rest early rather than listen to the dark news. Rosie stubbornly refuses, firmly reminding Randy that he must simply call them Corny and Rosie while inside their home. Despite her protests, Randy insists on maintaining his professionalism as he prepares to reveal his findings. He gravely explains that Lord Alec is a notorious womanizer, leading all high-ranking nobles to refuse his marriage proposals until the burden fell to a lowly baronial family. With a heavy heart, Randy concludes that high society cruelly views the sweet Lady Rebecca as nothing more than a disposable, decorative wife. Gripping the devastating report, Randy reveals Lord Alec's notorious habit of frequenting brothels. He grimly asks if Corny wishes to hear the sickening details. Randy flatly states that the entire wedding situation is a terrible, tragic story. The grim reality of Rebecca's marriage hangs heavily in the tense air. Lord Cornelius stands in heavy silence, his hand resting thoughtfully against his chin. A storm of protective concern brews intensely within his sharp eyes. Sensing his master's dangerous hesitation, Randy issues a stern, urgent warning. He firmly cautions Lord Cornelius against using his immense authority to interfere. Corny raises a reassuring hand, promising he will not meddle in another family's private affairs. Randy watches him closely, silently acknowledging the wise restraint. Staring resolutely ahead, Corny declares he will only act if Rebecca asks for help herself. A fierce, unwavering loyalty glimmers beneath his calm demeanor. Lady Rosie listens quietly beside them as Randy bows his head in respectful understanding. The trio silently unites in their shared concern for their gentle friend. Maintaining his disguise, Corny orders Randy to treat Rebecca merely as his friend. Randy accepts the command with absolute, unwavering professionalism. Rosie giggles brightly, playfully warning the stoic Randy not to give their secret away. Randy sighs awkwardly, admitting his severe lack of skill in casual speech. Sweating nervously, Randy hopes his stiff acting will slide completely unnoticed. He internally braces himself for the difficult undercover task ahead. A shocking revelation shatters the illusion, exposing Corny and Rosie as the crown prince and princess of the country. Their royal bloodline remains a fiercely guarded secret from the unsuspecting Rebecca. The royal siblings exchange a warm, knowing glance, completely dedicated to protecting their cherished new bond. Their gentle smiles radiate a profound, unspoken affection. Back at her sprawling estate, Rebecca warmly bids her in-laws farewell before heading out. Her mother-in-law watches her depart, noting how vibrant and full of life she has become. The older woman smiles softly, relieved that Rebecca has finally found joy in her embroidery hobby. She watches the carriage roll away with genuine maternal affection. Her father-in-law frowns with deep regret, wishing the foolish Alec would finally change his cruel ways. He sadly praises Rebecca's unwavering dedication to her rigorous lessons. Sunlight pours into the magnificent royal atelier, illuminating the sprawling collection of luxurious fabrics. A pristine dress form stands ready for another breathtaking creation. Rebecca marvels at a delicate swathe of fabric, noting she has never seen anything so incredibly thin before. She eagerly points out how often Corny uses it for his magnificent dresses. Corny smoothly explains that an acquaintance shipped the tulle-like material from abroad just for him. Rebecca touches it reverently, completely captivated by the exotic texture. Gesturing passionately, Corny describes how wire and embroidery transform the fabric into a structural masterpiece. He visualizes the intricate process with absolute creative fervor. A sudden sound shatters their peaceful bubble, making both Rebecca and Corny jolt in surprise. They turn sharply as the atelier doors swing open. Randy strides smoothly into the room, casually asking Corny for a brief moment of his time. He perfectly executes his role as a humble civilian. Rebecca blinks in confusion, politely asking Corny who the handsome newcomer is. She gazes at Randy with innocent, wide-eyed curiosity. Corny seamlessly introduces Randy as a close friend who frequently visits the estate. He quickly claims Randy brought the special fabric they needed. Slipping into a remarkably casual tone, Randy warmly asks Rebecca to just call him by his first name. He executes the friendly persona with surprising charm. The group relocates to the sunlit garden, settling around an elegant table for a relaxing afternoon tea. A gentle breeze rustles through the vibrant, blooming flowers. A lavish spread of mouth-watering pastries and freshly brewed tea rests temptingly on the ornate table. The delicate treats sparkle invitingly under the bright afternoon sun. Rosie enthusiastically praises her brother, noting he has been incredibly happy ever since Rebecca started visiting. She reveals how passionately he orders the finest threads just for their projects. Touched by his sister's warm words, Corny turns to Rebecca and offers a deeply sincere expression of gratitude. His gentle smile radiates pure, unadulterated joy. Flustered by the intense praise, Rebecca quickly waves her hands and stammers a humble denial. A bright, charming blush fiercely claims her cheeks. Corny softly confesses he never had anyone to share his intense passion for clothes with before. He earnestly declares how truly happy he is that they finally met. Randy chimes in smoothly, playfully calling Corny a total clothing nut while praising Rebecca's vital presence. He jokes that they could only ever listen to his endless fabric rants. Corny's smile falters slightly as he admits society heavily judged him, calling him a bizarre eccentric. He notes only his family and Randy ever understood his unconventional hobby. A shadow of pain crosses Corny's face as he reveals his obsession even caused marriage proposals to shatter. The cruel judgment of high society heavily punished his creative spirit. He bitterly recalls the sharp whispers and cruel mockery aimed at a nobleman doing needlework. The weight of rigid societal expectations hangs heavily over his confession. Rebecca looks at him with profound empathy, realizing how utterly agonizing it must have been for him as a man. Her heart aches fiercely for her misunderstood friend. Staring blankly ahead, Corny painfully admits he will probably have to abandon his dream one day. He doubts his creations are even good enough to turn into a real profession. Leaning forward with fiery determination, Rebecca passionately shouts that his dresses are absolutely wonderful. She fiercely demands he take immense pride in his breathtaking talent. Corny freezes in sheer shock, completely paralyzed by her unwavering, explosive declaration of support. His eyes widen as her powerful words strike him right in the heart. Rebecca stares him down with blazing, beautiful eyes, begging him to finally have confidence in himself. Her fierce encouragement tears through his deep-seated insecurities. With a radiant, angelic smile, she proudly confesses that his brilliant creations have deeply moved her heart. The sheer sincerity of her words illuminates the entire garden. Corny gazes at her with profound awe, softly breathing her name as a heavy blush dusts his cheeks. Her unwavering belief completely rewrites his shattered self-worth. Yielding to her fierce support, Corny smiles softly and admits he has no choice but to believe someone he respects so deeply. A newfound spark of confidence fiercely ignites within him. Rosie watches them with a knowing, affectionate smirk. Noting her brother simply lacks enough confidence, she silently celebrates the incredible impact Rebecca has on him. Utterly overwhelmed by embarrassment, Rebecca abruptly excuses herself to go pick some flowers. She practically flees the table, her face burning with a fiery, adorable blush. The trio watches her retreating figure in stunned, affectionate silence as the garden breeze sweeps around them. The atmosphere thickens with unspoken admiration. Rebecca steps into the vibrant garden, desperately trying to cool her burning cheeks away from their intense gazes. Her heart pounds wildly against her ribs. Randy turns to Rosie, genuinely praising Rebecca as an incredibly lovely and devoted woman. He firmly states she completely outshines the vicious rumors spread by high society. Swirling his tea, Randy admits he knows nothing about embroidery but recognizes the sheer, delicate beauty of her work. He completely validates her remarkable, undeniable skill. Corny enthusiastically jumps into the conversation, fiercely bragging about her flawless, immaculate lace knitting. He defends her artistry with explosive, unrelenting passion. Randy shoots Corny a sharp, knowing look. Noting this is the first time the prince has ever been this close to a marriageable woman, the sudden observation catches Corny completely off guard. Blushing fiercely, Corny aggressively denies the romantic implication. Snapping that their bond is strictly for the sake of dresses, he frantically tries to hide his heavily beating heart. Pondering deeply, Rosalind wonders what Alec could possibly find dissatisfying about having a woman like Rebecca as his wife. She acknowledges that the House of Hollow has its own unique circumstances to deal with. Letting out a heavy sigh, Rosalind rests her head in her hand and trails off. Watching Rebecca meticulously tailor a dress, Rosalind firmly believes she would never let her go if she were a man. A quiet hum escapes as focus shifts entirely to the delicate task at hand. Inspecting a delicate swatch, Rebecca thoughtfully notes that the fabric would flutter much more softly. Turning to Corny, she excitedly suggests that the chosen fabric might make the intricate design stand out far more. A wave of hesitation washes over her as she wonders if speaking up might make him find her annoying. Caught completely off guard, Corny stares back with wide eyes and a stunned expression. Breaking into a brilliant smile, Corny enthusiastically agrees that her great idea would definitely create a lighter-feeling dress. He explains that reducing the density means the design should be tweaked slightly so the loose ruffle gathers work perfectly. Listening intently, Rebecca looks up with bright, captivated eyes as the creative process unfolds. She eagerly pitches the idea of adding a bit more delicate embroidery to the hem to elevate the piece. Expressing gentle concern, he reminds Rebecca that adding embroidery would mean significantly more work for her. Beaming with absolute joy, Rebecca insists she would be happy to do it because she loves embroidery. Fired up by her passion, Corny declares he will go redraw the design sketch for a bit. A warm, shared excitement fills the room as they all stand together around the beautiful dress in progress. Working diligently at the table, Rebecca cherishes how incredibly fun it is to make clothes with Corny despite their few words. A tender, radiant smile graces her face as she completely immerses herself in the joyful task. Smiling warmly, Corny swiftly glides his quill over the parchment to bring their collaborative vision to life. To her, the beautiful rustling of fabric and the scratching of his quill pen compose the most enchanting music. Suddenly, a playful voice cuts through the peaceful atmosphere, calling out to her brother. Startled by the sudden intrusion, Rosalind snaps to attention with a sharp gasp. Stepping quietly into view, the stoic young man raises a finger to his lips in a silent request for quiet. Completely oblivious to the onlookers, Corny and Rebecca lean against the table in a joyful, animated conversation. Watching fondly from the doorway, Rosalind and the newly arrived brother observe the sweet scene before them. Welcoming her warmly, Corny invites her back anytime, prompting an eager Rebecca to ask if she can return tomorrow. Her eyes practically sparkling with anticipation, Rebecca beams at the wonderful prospect of coming back. Gathering her things, she steps away with a heart full of inspiration and the fabric carefully in hand. Striding happily out of the room, her elegant dress trails lightly behind her joyful steps. Fully absorbed in her craft, she meticulously weaves beautiful embroidery into the flowing fabric. Bounding forward with boundless energy, she races across the grounds while Corny watches with a surprised smile. Staring up at the grand estate, she reflects on the incredible opportunities awaiting her at the Amber House. She thrills at the thought of finally being able to do as much of the embroidery she loves as her heart desires. Standing proudly beside Rosalind and the brother, she feels the profound warmth of finally being surrounded by people who appreciate her. Smiling brightly between her dear friends, she realizes there is absolutely nothing in the world that makes her happier than this. Sitting quietly at her work desk, she desperately wishes these perfect days would last forever. Gazing at her sewing tools, she catches herself harboring the foolish wish that the dress would simply never be finished. The imposing facade of the grand estate stands silently, framing the transition in her day. Seated formally at a long table, Rebecca faces her intimidating mother-in-law over a tense cup of tea. Maintaining her composure, Rebecca politely asks her mother-in-law what is on her mind. A subtle, almost approving smile touches the older woman's lips as she gazes back. Surprising her entirely, the mother-in-law gracefully thanks Rebecca for always working so incredibly hard. She declares that Rebecca's perfect conduct and manners make her incredibly proud to present her anywhere as a daughter of the house. Leaning forward earnestly, she formally invites Rebecca to her upcoming tea party to introduce her to her friends. Deeply moved, Rebecca listens with wide eyes as the older woman affirms that she is a truly fine lady regardless of what anyone might say. A soft, deeply touched smile graces Rebecca's face as the genuine praise warms her heart. Clasping her hands together, she silently prays that Lord Alec will also acknowledge her worth someday. Greeting him formally, she offers a warm welcome home to her towering father-in-law. Noting her husband's absence, Rebecca anxiously asks her father-in-law if Lord Alec is not with him. Stepping into the grand hall, the father-in-law confirms that Alec has returned home today. With a grave expression, he gently advises Rebecca that it would be best if she avoided seeing her husband. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echo from the other side of the imposing double doors. A servant politely interrupts, announcing that Lord Alec has specifically asked for Lady Rebecca. Startled by the sudden summons, the father-in-law repeats Alec's name in sheer disbelief. Stepping forward protectively, the father-in-law begs Rebecca not to go see him. Turning toward him, a hesitant but hopeful Rebecca points out that this is the very first time Lord Alec has ever sent for her. Brimming with sudden excitement, she dashes down the hallway with a bright, expectant smile. Bursting into the master bedroom, her eager greeting dies in her throat at the scandalous sight of Alec lounging in bed with two scantily clad women. Frozen in the doorway, Rebecca stares with wide, horrified eyes at the shocking tableau. Looking up with a lazy, unbothered smirk, Alec casually wishes his wife a good day. Gesturing to the half-dressed women draped over him, he shamelessly introduces them as his girlfriends. The room falls into a heavy, uncomfortable silence as the sheer audacity of his words hangs in the air. Furious at the brazen display, the father-in-law storms in and loudly scolds Alec for forcing his wife to witness such a scene. Leaning into Alec's ear, one of the mistresses whispers defensively while Alec nonchalantly reminds his father that he informed Rebecca of his hobbies right after they married. Slamming his fist down, the father-in-law roars that Alec's behavior is utterly unacceptable for the heir of a ducal house. A tense silence blankets the room as the two men lock into a fierce battle of wills. Leaning his head on his hand, Alec complains that it is incredibly unfair for his father to scold only him over such common playtime. With a dismissive scoff, Alec argues that since the women are commoners, his actions carry no problematic strings attached. Flashing a wicked grin, he casually offers to let Rebecca join in on their debauchery since he is in such a good mood. Caught completely off guard, Rebecca gasps softly in utter disbelief. A dark, predatory smirk crosses Alec's face as he revels in her discomfort. Pressing the issue, he sadistically repeats his generous offer to let her participate in their twisted games. Leaning forward with a mocking smile, one of the mistresses maliciously questions if a refined lady could even handle such rough play. Looking Rebecca up and down, she cruelly comments that the chaste wife appears far too inflexible for their tastes. Another mistress eagerly joins the bullying, loudly wondering if Rebecca is truly Alec's wife since her figure is nothing to boast about. Cruel giggles echo through the lavish bedroom as the women mercilessly tear down her confidence. Staring blankly at the floor, Rebecca painfully realizes that their worlds are simply too different to ever bridge. Crushed by the harsh reality, she listens as Alec cruelly announces to his mistresses that she possesses strange hobbies. Alec maliciously mocks her handmade clothing, claiming she was merely trying to get his attention by sewing such a dress. A cold dread washes over her as she remembers the beautiful tea party dress Corny and Rosie praised so warmly. Trembling violently, her mind races as the precious memory of their praise clashes with her current humiliation. The devastating weight of the mockery crashes down on her, leaving her utterly paralyzed. Stomping her heavy boot backward with explosive force, a sudden surge of defensive panic ignites within her. Jerking back to protect her creation, she violently screams at them not to touch it. Clutching the fabric to her chest, she desperately guards the dress as a final barrier against their cruelty. The mistresses exchange arrogant, mocking sneers at her pitiful display of defiance. As the father-in-law apologizes profusely for the unsightly scene, a devastated Rebecca blames herself for not listening and turns to flee. The heavy mansion doors slam shut behind her, sealing away the nightmare she just escaped. Running frantically across the sprawling estate grounds, she desperately wishes she could return to her peaceful days of sewing in Iris. A solitary crescent moon hangs in the dark sky, casting a cold light on her lonely sorrow. Hot tears stream down her face as she agonizes over the impossibility of returning to the parents who were so overjoyed by her engagement. Collapsing onto her arms, she buries her face and sobs uncontrollably into her sleeves. Crushed beneath the weight of her perceived inadequacies, she bitterly labels herself a failure of a daughter. Visualizing the unfinished garment on its mannequin, she resolves to permanently cut ties with the Ombre House the moment she completes it. She berates herself for selfishly taking advantage of Corny and Rosalind's incredible kindness. Standing alone in the dark, she tragically reflects that their warm home is the only place where she can temporarily forget what a massive failure she is. Wiping her eyes with a trembling arm, she desperately tries to stem the endless flow of tears. Turning her back to the harsh night, she gathers her remaining fractured strength to face the arduous path ahead. Looking toward the illuminated window, she silently begs for forgiveness and promises to endure the pain until the dress is finally finished.